I'm now going to look at the eye. So we're going to use the black for this. So you want to have a mixture that's quite thick, not too much water, so that you can control exactly where this paint goes. And you just need to paint it very carefully. I'm painting the inner circle, leaving the outer one white for the time being, and remembering not to paint across the highlight of the eye. You need to leave that highlight white, so just paint around that highlight. I'm just dabbing on that black paint now just to thicken it and deepen the colour there. We can also look at the beak. Rinse off that black paint, and let's pick up some of the ultramarine blue and just strengthen it a little bit in the palette there. Okay, so I'm going to dab off the excess, and I'm going to paint that across the whole of his beak, starting at the top. If you have too much paint on your brush, you'll soon realise, because it'll start to puddle, and just dab off the excess if that happens. And his top beak kind of overlaps slightly, overhangs the bottom one slightly. Okay, I'm going to go straight into my palette and pick up some more of that ultramarine blue now, and dab it. So this is much thicker paint. I'm dabbing it on along that line, along the bottom line there of the top half of his beak, just to accentuate that shape. I'm dragging it back. The tip of his beak is paler. And while that's wet, I'm just going to dab off that blue and come into my black. And just a little bit of the water now because it's dried off a bit. Let's dab on some of that black just at the top here where it meets the feathers of his head. And if you look, it also comes across this darker line of his beak as well. So I'm going to allow that to dry before I do the bottom section. But what I will do before I leave it, with a clean brush, take off all the excess water. Just want to pull out a highlight at the top by dragging my brush across that top edge. You can pull some of that paint away and pull out that highlight that's at the top of his beak on the reference image there. It's definitely much paler at the top. So we've just pulled some of that paint away. I'm going to allow that to dry now and have a look at his cheek. So although this patch on the side of the bird's face is white, the feathers are clearly white, it's going to look odd if we don't put anything on there at all. So I'm suggesting putting some shadows of grey, very, very pale grey, a bit like I did on the ears of the zebra, if you did my last workshop. You can find that on my YouTube channel as well. So I used a very, very pale grey just to suggest hairs on the zebra's ears. This time I'm going to use this grey to suggest feathers on the side of its cheek here. So I'm going to, let's wet that area first with the clean water. and that way any grey paint that I place down will be diffused. It'll have a nice soft edge to it. So yeah, let's just damp that area of the paper. Okay, I think that's okay there, got a little hair. Okay, so let's just dab on some of this grey and just suggest some feathers, fluffy feathers in there. That spreads out nicely. I just make under his eye a little bit darker there. That's all I want to do, just a little bit like that, just to suggest the feathers that are there. I think we ought to look at the top section of the bird's wings, across his back there next. And again, this is going to be a little bit like his breast. So we're going to transition through a couple of different colours there. Just to make things easier for us, I have cleaned my palette here with the original green, and we're just going to use the Hooker's green that's in your palette. That's the darker green of the two. So just wet that and pick up some of that Hooker's green paint and transfer it to your palette. So it's a nice dark green, and if I just do a tester for you, that's the difference. That's the colour we used on his breast, and this is the colour we're going to use on his back. So a little bit darker and a little bit cooler in tone as well. So the other colour we want to look at adding is the blue again here. So we're going to use the same blue as on his head, the Prussian blue, which is this one in your palette. So just cleaning off the green first and picking up some of that Prussian blue, and just a little bit of water on my palette there, and mix that Prussian blue in. Okay, let's pick up a bit more. Okay, that should be fine. Right, so and again, we want these two colours to sort of blend together on the surface seamlessly. So to do that, we need to wet that area first of all with water. So starting at the top of his back, drag that water all the way down that edge. Now there's a little sort of triangle at the top of this section here that you want to paint water into, and I just drew some little feathers from his cheek there onto his back with that grey, and I also drew some of the yellow onto this wing here while it was wet. So this should blend with those. If I wet, no, that's fine. Left some spaces in the middle. It's always good to look from an angle because it is tricky from above to see where you have wet and where you haven't. So you want it all nice and even, not great big puddles, but you do want a nice soft sheen. That's going to allow the paint to move a little bit more freely and to blend together on the surface. So let's go into, let's just clean my brush off because it's got blue on there. First of all, we want to start with the Hooker's green. Okay, so just going to drop that into place. You can see how it wants to move in that water, which is lovely. Just what we want it to do. Just going to pick up some more. So your paints will dry a little bit lighter, you've probably noticed that. So when you first apply them, they look a little bit darker than when they dry. And that's how watercolours work. Just bringing that green to the edge there. And then I want to drag this down across the wing. So it's drying a little bit. Just get some more water on here. I want it to blend with the yellow a little bit there, so let's put some more water down. Just having that problem with the lights again, drying it very quickly. So I have to move very fast here to get this to blend nicely on the surface. So I'm just dragging this green paint to the tops of where it meets the white sections. You can feather it in a little bit along that edge. Bring that across. And then cleaning off my brush and picking up some of that lovely Prussian blue. Dab that on. Comes up under there as well. And there's quite a hard edge just where that blue finishes. So we've got a sort of a nice soft transition here, bringing some of that blue into the green. Blend those two in a little bit. So I want to work with the tip of my brush now, just to drag the paint a little bit in the direction that the feathers are lying, just to create some little lines through that paint while it's wet. Make sure they look like they're sitting in the right direction. I'm just manipulating that paint a little bit. So now I'm going to come back underneath his wing here, now that's fully dried. I did pop some little spots of water on his back after a couple of minutes, and you can see that there's some little blooms, patches there. But you guys don't have to do that, it's just something I wanted to do to add a little bit of texture. So looking at underneath his wing here, I'm going to use the ultramarine blue. So I'll just wet that on my palette, pick up a little bit more. So all the areas around this are dry, so we should be okay to go straight in there. So there's a nice hard line where this wing, obviously it's the edge, very edge of his wing here. It meets the body, and all under here there are those white feathers, sorry, on top there going across his wings, so we don't want to paint those. Just want to paint a nice even coat of this ultramarine blue just up to the edge of his wing. Take off that excess paint and just leave it around the surface there. Okay, so So we'll allow that to dry, and then we can come in with some darker stripes through that. Now, before I started recording, I took my pencil and drew in the lines that you can see on top of this wing here. So that's showing the separations of each of his feathers there along that white edge and coming up into the blue. So what we can do is use the ultramarine blue again for this and just paint over those lines I've drawn in. I'm painting just on the dry paper here, so I want these lines to stay in position and give us some definition. And then we've got some slightly paler lines just showing the separations there of those feathers. So what we can do is we can soften those by just wetting the tip of this brush. Just soften the edges off a little bit. By painting up to the edge of the line, it'll just soften the look of it a little bit. Okay, so we've added some detail onto the cheek, but around that cheek the black is very black. So let's have a look at that now. So I'm re-wetting this black that's in my palette. That's dried. And I'm going to work underneath the beak first of all and place on this black and build up some of those little flicks of feathers, just that feathered edge there of the white, and just deepen this whole section here under his chin. And leaving some of that grey showing to come through little lines in the direction that the feathers are falling, and it gives it some texture. And then we can do some little flecks out from his body as well. This is where we can sort of bring the black down into the yellow now it's there. Just to soften that edge and show that they are feathers. Let's get some more pigment. So I'm just picking up some more paint off the palette. A bit of fresh paint there. And just dotting it back onto the top of what I've just done. Just to darken it a bit more, leaving some of that grey to come through. Now I'm going to work on the top of the eye, so in exactly the same way. I'm just going to turn my board to make it a bit easier for me to paint. So into the black there. Just around the edge of the beak to begin with, and then keep looking at your reference image just for guidance, and that will give you confidence as to where to place this dark black. And we need to pull it up the head there on the forehead and around the eye. Now at the moment I haven't painted around the eye yet, but I will paint that in. But at the moment let's focus on the black the depth of the black here. So I'm just sort of dabbing, putting little streaks of paint, just being really careful around its eye here. And if I turn that round, let's have a look. Yeah, so it's starting to look better now with that black. It kind of carries on back across his head. Pick up some more of my paint. Okay, and the same, just a little bit of definition just underneath here with the very tip of my brush. Bring some of that dark underneath and down. And these little strokes are really helpful for describing the feathers. And then I'm quickly going to wash my brush and mix up some of the phthalo blue, Prussian blue. Okay, got Prussian blue now. And just take some of the excess off my brush and do a similar thing, just layer this across the top of the underwash. And it's always easier for you to drag the paint towards you, so move your board around and that will really help you to create these little lines. Bring some of that down into the green. And then working on the head, if I turn him completely around, I'm just going to bring some of these feathers across his head. Darken that colour here. So he's lighter right at the top, but he does have these darker sections coming down. And I'm just going to add some water, make a thin mix of this colour to just, oops, too much on my brush, take that off, just to soften the edges of those. Okay, so now he's starting to look a little bit more like a bird should look. So we're creating that effect of feathers.